Doodle doo 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 doo. Doodle doo 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 doo. Doodle doo 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 doo. Sorry, I was just doing a Little House on the Prairie there for some reason. It just popped into my head. Good evening. Good afternoon. Welcome to tonight's channel. Welcome to tonight's episode of the Grandstream, this thing of ours, where the warriors of truth and investigating those of a curious nature come to gather around to hear the latest whispers, the latest rumors, from our one and only Fiona. Before I bring Fiona in, please, as we always do, don't forget, even though the criticism kicks in, and also don't forget, and if you could, please brighten my North Star, and we carry on. Facebook joining us as well this evening, Catherine McKay, a big us brother to you, Dal Dublin Bread, Kevin Murphy, Donald Casey, Stephen Lloyd, Paul Kay, Kieran Healan, Paul Pugh. As the room fills up, welcome one, welcome all. Let's just get at it, will we? Fiona, how are you?
I'm very good, Rowan. How are you?
Delighted that you could join, Rock. I'm grand. How was your day?
It's not been bad. I mean, you know, as weeks go, it's just been kind of roller coaster, really, with events. I suppose we're just all trying to keep abreast of all the changes, what's happening around the world, how it relates to us. So there is never a dull moment, even though we're all locked up.
100%. 5x5 from the live chat there. We are coming through crystal clear. There's a whole raft of things that we could go through and where we can start off. But let me just to confirm and to invite you, Fiona, that we're going to try and keep this a weekly episode now. Friday Night Lights with Fiona Marie Flanagan. And
great.
I want to throw it out there to the live chat before we begin tonight's disquisition. One for yes or two from no from the live chat. And I hope you were paying attention over there, Fiona. And the response. You'll see the response from the live chat.
I'm seeing. Hello.
Live chat. One for yes, two for no for a weekly show. Friday nights with Friday Night Flanagan is Gemma O'D fan. Positive. All the ones kicking in now. Appreciate that. Look at that there. You are lighting the board up, Fiona.
Oh, bless. Okay. Why don't we say GT and Fiona Marie or something?
No. We know it's the Grandstream stream. We know the platform. We know the personality. It's a dedicated night to you. All things Fiona Marie Flanagan. Oh. I didn't want to call you Fifi or anything like that. That would be anyway. Let's break away.
Well, people do call me that, I have to say. And one request I would make is, is there any way you could fix me a green screen? I really love that library. Anyway, we'll talk offline.
Check out a few of the books. You know what I mean? Brian Dobson. I've still engaged Brian Dobson. He's doing the tea for me. Remember we sacked Claire Bourne last week. He couldn't get anything. Now I've kept Brian busy. He's renovating certain parts of the house. Ever since he got his retirement package from RTA, the man just won't sit still. You know what I mean? He's been sat in his hole for 30 years. Now he's got a burst of energy.
I didn't think you'd make me. I didn't think I'd laugh as much today. It has to be said.
Very fantastic. Peace Poppy shouting out there saying hello, FMF and GT. Love to see you both. Christine, a lot of ones there. GT plus FMF. And absolutely chronological. Friday night likes. Love it. You know. So we'll work on the title in the meantime. Fiona, first and foremost, I know you've had a week on Twitter, and I'm sure you've had many observations during the week. We've just had Leo Varadkar, the Prime Minister, making a speech or an address to the nation. I didn't per se watch it because I knew you'd be watching it there. Do you want to touch in on that first of all?
Yes, our dear leader, the highlights, and I've got them from RTE News because, do you know what, I couldn't bear to watch it either. Current restrictions extended until 18th of May. People over 70 can now go outside from Tuesday, but my understanding is they have to stay away from everybody else. The 2 kilometer limit for exercise can be extended to 5 kilometers now as of this Tuesday, is my understanding. Okay, so I might not get all these right. Outdoor workers can return to work in 2 weeks' time. Schools will stay closed until September, so I think that'll probably please the teachers and the pupils alike. And DIY and hardware stores to reopen from 18th of May. And don't ask me why they've been closed up until now. That's just something that I fail to comprehend. So what he has basically said is social distancing is here to stay until such time as the vaccine is available or an alternative therapy. And by therapy, I think we can take it for granted that Dear Leo means pharmaceutical therapy as opposed to a natural therapy. So, I mean, in later phases, he has said restaurants, preschools, cafes, bars, cinemas, and gyms will open. So I think these are the key points. But to sort of put this into perspective, I feel personally, and I don't know how whether you agree or not, but I feel like we're being treated like children. That this is almost like, if you behave yourselves and do what you are supposed to do, then we will allow you out to do more stuff in the middle of May. Now, that again is a big assumption. I am not holding to that any more than I held to the 5th of May, because a lot of things can change in the interim. So it's almost like it's sort of, you know, when you're in a car trip with your parents and you're saying, how many more miles, how many more miles? So they'll say, oh, you know, it's only another 20 minutes. Yeah, just to keep us quiet and hold us, keep us in a holding pattern. So it's not that I don't think there will be further relaxations this summer. I suspect there will. But I think we all know, because we've been told, and our leaders speak in code, but we need to be able to decode it more efficiently, that there will be a phase 2 of this virus.
Yeah,
and now, in my view, there are various ways that phase 2 can manifest itself. The first way, which I think is quite likely, is that we will see an increased number of deaths from those people whose treatments were delayed on account of the lockdown, because no one is paying any attention to this. You know, if we know from video footage, but we also know from even the MSM have to admit that people are not getting their cancer treatments, they're not getting their consultations, they're not getting their operations, etc., etc. So this will bring further hardship down the line and undoubtedly result in fatalities, sadly. So that's one sort of phase or cluster of fatalities that we may see. Now, remember this as well. Sorry for going on, but these can be classed as COVID anyway, because of the liberal way that attributions of fatalities can be assigned to people. Even if there's a suspicion that it's COVID, you can actually class that death as COVID, even if that person's primary cause of death was stage 4 cancer. So we're in this crazy place where literally almost everybody dying could get the COVID tag on their toes. So that of itself could facilitate another wave at any point that is convenient. Now, I'm kind of abstracting from a natural wave of where people contract the disease in any case. Okay, I'm talking about how they could manufacture numbers should they wish to get us back into full-on lockdown. Another worry I have, and I want to make people aware of it, I have done on Twitter, is our dear friend Mr. Gates in conversation, and he has said this already. I think he gave an interview in 2017. It was published in The Guardian, but he's also given an interview more recently where he said that he believes, and again, I'm not saying he believes it with certainty, but he's concerned that phase 2 will be a bioweapon or bioterrorism.
Yeah.
Now, what he means by that, I do not know, but this is what is concerning him. So if Mr. Gates is concerned about this, we should definitely be mindful ourselves.
Yeah. It's kind of like, as we said, Fiona, it's kind of like they have to tell you what they're going to do in order to fulfill a certain pledge. We won't go that far deep in it, because he did announce that there would be or Fauci announced that there would be a pandemic plight during this Trump administration.
Yes.
Gates is on record speaking about the necessity that things won't go back to normal, and that the global cooperation and the global rollout of vaccination. There will be no normal till the world is vaccinated. I'm looking at I don't know if you've seen it as well. I'm looking at I think it's a chemist up in Portadown. He's very active on the Facebook. He does the breakdown of chemistry and stuff like that. Eminently more qualified, but he can see straight through all the stages, and they agree with you. It's kind of like they're priming and prepping us for a second wave, whether that's pushed out, as you say, through Bill Gates, or by the constant social distancing, the constant stress on our immune systems, and we will develop it naturally because we'll all
Yes.
come out a lot
Yes.
weaker.
Yeah, I mean, and that, why this situation of lockdown has persisted is just beyond me, but I kind of know in the back of my mind. But looking at it, rationally, there is no reason for this. Why on earth, never in our human history have the healthy been locked up? Okay, so the healthy, no matter how much we try to get outdoors, to take our exercise, within 2 kilometers, etc., the facts of the matter are we are losing our herd immunity to this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we do emerge, inevitably there will be, our immune systems will be somewhat compromised because, as you know, not any bit of advice coming from our health professionals or our government have been to try and make sure that our own immunity is as strong as possible. Nowhere have they said it's really important for you to eat well. It's really important for you to do this, supplement with vitamin C if you need to, if you feel you're not getting your nutrients, etc., etc. Never. That is just not what is important to them. To them, the only solutions are pharmaceutically based. So yes, we have compromised our healthy in our society by locking them up. And this is the first time in human history, to my knowledge, that this has ever been done to a population. You quarantine the vulnerable and the sick. You do not quarantine the healthy. And of course, this virus is the most miraculous thing ever to have emerged, in that we're all running around asymptomatic without even knowing it. Like, in which case, then you counter and say, well, in which case, if we're all running around with this virus, we clearly don't have enough viral load for it to be negatively impacting our system and our health. But added to that, if you have a wider population of people with the virus, your fatality rates are going to just get smaller and smaller and smaller. So they can't have it both ways. The fatalities are either smaller than the flu if we all are running around with this virus, or they're not. So it's, I just think they're balancing the figures on a knife edge, fudging them. Sorry, Rowan, I've gone onto the government website to try and get a breakdown of fatalities in age ranges, but I can't see it anymore because they're not putting it up there on the daily report. You remember they used to give us the median age, and they'd give us a little bit more information about those people who have succumbed to the disease or died with it, not of it, because we are not say that. But maybe it's me, maybe it's I haven't searched deeply enough, but I can't find that now. They're not giving that to us.
Maybe on retrospect, I mean, I know you must be following Dr. Marcus de Bruin as well on his Twitter feed, and his scathing, his absolute scathing of the government's handle. And I'm delighted. I think he's so courageous and outspoken, in his putting his career, because I believe he operates out of a care home, and he's got his patients' best intentions. He's got the best of intentions for his patients, but the papers that he's writing, if you read them, I've read them out now, both verbatim. I think as a matter of record, and to push them out, to give it to a huge audience. He spoke in specific terms that Simon Coveney should today, take the proper procedures that he's advocating for in nursing homes and prepare for a tribunal. I mean, that's for a man of his stature and standing to put that out there in the plate, I think is remarkable and huge.
Absolutely, and thank goodness for him. That's all I can say. We are so lucky that he has, broken ranks and is now advocating for the elderly, because I wanted to mention the care homes, and it came to my attention on Twitter, and I believe it to be a HSE PowerPoint slide. So I believe it to be authentic. And this was what was said on it. Management of all known or suspect COVID-19 84 residents will take place in the care facility itself. So in other words, if they are suspected or if they have tested positive for COVID, they do not get admission to hospital.
Yeah.
So they're not, regardless of their underlying condition, regardless of their age, because you know how dementia takes people. And, I am quite familiar with care home setting because my own late father. So I can tell you that there are all ages there. In fact, there were, a number of younger people that you would think goodness, should not be there, but dementia has taken them earlier, and then they're unable to look after themselves at home. So that is quite heartbreaking. But let me also say that if there's a suspicion that you have COVID in a care home and you are not allowed to hospital, there's only a very limited intervention that a care home can actually give you. First of all, they can't give you IV antibiotics, intravenous antibiotics. They can only give it orally. And secondly, there's no way you can get IV fluids. So there's, as I remember, you can only get them subcutaneously, and that's not advised as a long-term measure. So if that person is having difficulty swallowing or difficulty eating, they can't take their meds. So their meds aren't going to be ingested. Furthermore, I don't know whether or not the care homes, I mean, my father was lucky enough to have been put on oxygen, and they can certainly, just a natural oxygen source, because if your oxygen sats that your statistics are down, they automatically put him on an oxygen supply. And that really did recover to the kind of over 90, because I know all these stats in my head. But what I'm saying is, to leave a person automatically in a care home who has COVID is tantamount to
euthanasia.
Yes.
That's
That's
as
how
simple
I
as that.
feel. Yes.
And like I said, all of those valid points that you brought out there. Then, and we spoke about it, myself and Dave Cullen on Computer Forever earlier on. We spoke about it first thing in the morning, and we are speaking about it consistently. That I know Dee is in the house as well. Dee is in the live chat there as well. She did a video drop, citizen journalist in James's Street Hospital, and the wards are lying empty. And they will not take the COVID positive patients and place them into a hospital to receive the care, even though that we're funding a bill of something like 28 million towards the hospital beds that are lying empty, because we're paying the O'Brien and the processing pimp for their hospitals that they just newly acquired, and we're sitting there for idle machines, idle nurses. We've already said on Dave's show that 71,000 people volunteered or came back to work and help in the frontline services, but only 1,500, or I believe 1,300, have been used. Again, I'm reiterating the point from earlier on. We've also seen that nurses have to come back and pay something like 450 quid or 500 quid to re-register as a nurse back over here. Simply can't afford it. They can't get jobs back here that they've come back to volunteer. Our defence forces, many have been outlined and cannot re-volunteer or re-enlist to help. Otherwise, their pensions will be affected if they rejoin. Just for that purely matter, the government has kept the defence forces at bay. It's doing everything in its power to impede nurses that are volunteering to help out. And by not rolling out the proper care of the genuinely sick out of that COVID possible nursing home and isolate them and give them the due care, I don't understand the reasoning of it.
No, I mean, you know what? If you wanted to look at it very, very cynically and very, the malicious intent of that would be, a removal of the elderly. And I will say it, that it looks to me like just pure and utter neglect, as you have said, euthanasia of our most vulnerable, which, you're looking at it from an amoral government perspective, would relieve the burden on the unfunded pension liabilities. And
exactly what my friend said as well. When this pandemic first broke out, and we could see the statistics that it was going straight after the elderly, because of their age, because of their immune system. My angry dad said to me, a friend of mine said, they're going after the pensions. They're reducing the debt burden because of this other that they won't speak about, that you're going to educate us on and bring us up to speed again in the economic sense of what they're trying to achieve.
No, it's true. It's absolute. I can't emphasize enough. It is horrifying. And these are the data. The data show, as you have said, that the most vulnerable to this COVID-19 are the elderly. They're actually people who are obese. I hate to say it, but they're in a category of vulnerability too. Obviously, comorbidities, pre-existing conditions, but this all stands to reason. So, like I said, economically, as economic agents, they're unproductive, so they will necessarily be a sort of a target group, because the end result will be less burden on the unfunded pension liabilities, as you have said. So, you know, I can't come to any further conclusion about that as to why the elderly are left there. And added to which, what concerns me greatly, and I'll just talk about protocols for a second, because I've been listening to some nurses who have come on to Facebook and Twitter and, you know, made public their concerns. And what they were saying is, and I don't know, does this apply to Ireland? I can assume some uniformity in protocol, though, because if it's all centralized and driven out of the UN World Health Organization, I think we can assume that there is some standardization of what, you know, as I say, protocols that are occurring in hospitals. But that if people come in and they are compromised, they have respiratory compromise, they are left crash. Now, what they, you know, I'm no doctor, but to me, why do they automatically rule out non-intervention of an oxygen source just to relieve and calm the breathing? But no, they let them crash and then they go straight on to ventilation. So I won't dwell on this too much because I'm sure you have covered it, but that to me is horrifying again, because if your lungs are healthy, and remember, this particular virus doesn't necessarily damage the lungs. The lungs, you go in there and you do not necessarily have lung damage. That needs to be established. So to go on a ventilator like that is actually, it is dangerous. And this is why we're seeing so many fatalities come off the ventilator. You know, my understanding is 80% of people who go on those ventilators do not come off. That's it.
No, the lifelong injuries. It causes catastrophic injury to the lungs.
Catastrophic to the lungs because the lungs.
Because of the mechanical pressure.
Yes, because and I'll say this, and I will go public, because I had a respiratory issue a year ago, which is why I had to leave my career. And looking back on it, nobody could ever figure out what it was. But had you put me on a ventilator, my lungs were perfect. They're fine. Nobody could find anything wrong with my lungs. That would have been the absolute wrong intervention to do. So I can't emphasize enough how horrifying it is that these treatments are being given, and they're not necessarily correct, and they have catastrophic consequences if you show up with COVID or as suspicion of having COVID. And you can understand that people are living in fear. We've discussed this before. They, you know, to the average person out there, if they did develop a cough or they did develop, you know, sort of fatigue or any degree of breathlessness, you would understand they'd automatically think, oh no, I'm COVID, and present themselves into a hospital. And the next thing you know, they're straight into ICU.
Yeah.
Because what do we know? We have no transparency. You know, nobody can get in there. Nobody can see. Nobody can accompany their relatives or friends. It's appalling. They go in there and it's a black box and you do not know what is happening to these people.
Absolutely, Fiona, and it seems to be a game plan that's running out in different jurisdictions as well. So if that, and if Dr. De Bruin is correct, and if there is a tribunal, these will only come back after the fact. But we've no way of applying pressure because of this jackboot knife approach to enforce from Drew Harris, you know, to leverage this and to threaten people that turned up last Tuesday. We're going to identify you and criminally prosecute you and all this, just to set the tone out there. You know what I mean? It's pretty much akin to like that change.org petition that's gone around saying that Gemma and John don't speak for us. As we've seen on numerous occasions, change.org and all those positions, they're about as useful as a wet fart, really, and anything that they do. And I'm sorry to be so callous, but to see that.
No, it is absolutely true.
Like that, you know what I mean?
You know, the way I see it, and you know, I know we're preaching to the choir here to a certain extent, but the longer we go in this lockdown and the more data that we see and the more evidence that we're gathering and the deeper the understanding of how these COVID deaths are attributed and the flawed data that the Irish government are working from, the predictions that were just so wide off the mark. You know, Josiah Burke, he did a brilliant tweet and he decimated
let's cut it there, Gemma. Sorry, Fiona. I actually have it lined up. I wanted to bring it up and speak, and because I have a lot of time for the Burke brothers. I think the Burke brothers are fantastic, and I'm not going to go through their names, but I wanted to line that up here because I seen you retweeting it. I read out a thread that Professor Honkelberg already did and I wanted to bring the two guys up.
Tracy O'Mahony also retweeted it.
Yeah.
And I think Jim Core even retweeted it. So it's had a lot of visibility from the big accounts.
Yeah, I have it here. I want to play it and stream for those viewing from abroad or our fellow our diaspora abroad, I should say. I just want to bring it up here and play it from now quickly, Fiona.
Yeah, sure. No, very good.
Let me bring that up to share screen. A little bit of lag. Hang on. Do bear with.
You need 5G.
Oh, never gonna happen.
No, I'm joking.
No. Bear with there, live chat. It's just a bit of drag on the laptop. Come on.
People are starting to become familiar with those words. So today we online will add.
Sorry, folks. Bear with.
So today we online leader Fiona Falls stood up in Dáil Éireann and told us all that, I quote, this virus has been every bit as deadly and destructive as was feared. Take a listen.
This virus has been every bit as deadly and destructive as was feared.
Except that it hasn't been. Take a look back at what Leo Varadkar told the country on March the 17th.
I think everyone will understand at this stage that there will be an exponential increase.
The government had rolled out. So
Hello, Rowan.
family businesses face.
Everyone can see and hear me, but Rowan, are you there? Guys, give me a 5x5. I'm alone here.
Sorry, my apologies. Too much lag.
I was going to have to go all alone. I was going to paraphrase what he said, and
it's gonna happen sooner or later, Fiona. So you might as well.
no worries, no worries.
Like that. Apologies for that. Too much pressure on the processor here in the laptop to bring the three perspectives. But can you run us through what the?
Yeah, I mean, he was absolutely fantastic. He basically reiterated what Leo Varadkar had said, that he expected that Leo Varadkar said it would be inevitable that we would have an exponential increase in the number of cases. 30% increase every day. So according to Leo's original projections, which he said were inevitable, in other words, would be happening with certainty, there should have been 600,000 cases by April the 12th, but there were actually 9,000. So there was a difference between 600,000 of Leo's inevitable cases versus 9,000 that actually happened in reality. So in other words, his prediction was 0.0.15 off. And you know how the shills are saying, oh, but it's because of the lockdown that all of those numbers have been reduced. No, that's just not credible, because Leo announced these predictions, these inevitable predictions, after we all went into lockdown. So if any of the shills are at you, do not take it. Just say, no. You can't hold that argument. And besides, there is no counterfactual anyway. And in fact, if you go and look at the countries that didn't have a lockdown, their data are even more favorable than those that did go in for full lockdown. Now, how long these data will be allowed to persist is anyone's guess, because again, putting my cynical hat on, I would expect them to be sabotaged down the tracks. But as it stands, we do have a marked contrast in those countries that went into lockdown and those countries that didn't. Now, they all had some sort of restrictions or some sort of quarantining for sure, but this was not lockdown. So in other words, Josiah, Mr. Burke basically exposed Leo for being wildly inaccurate with his predictions, which justified everything because we were in lockdown already.
It was inevitable.
Leo stands up
It was
to say,
inevitable, and there was no stopping it. There was no stopping
it's Armageddon. And then when the predictions were not coming to fruition, they never rolled back. Nobody ever held them to account. Nobody ever challenged them on the actual data that were emerging. No one has ever taken the government to task, but nobody in the opposition, and has said, look, what are you doing? Look what's happening to the economy. Look what's happening to jobs. Look what's happening to small businesses. Look what's happening to livelihoods. Look what's happening to our healthy who are being locked up. What are we doing? Not one person in any political party held our leaders to account on this.
No opposition. We have no opposition over here.
It's just, it's shambolic. I mean, can I just reiterate what we've done? We've produced flawed data, which are clearly flawed. Yep. We've locked up our healthy. We've been stripped of our freedom. A police state has been imposed upon us. Our economy is destroyed. And I'll talk about the economic data in a second, because we've only got quarter one. Quarter one tells us nothing. Okay. We have effectively euthanized the elderly. We have denied our other sick, and they're every bit as important as COVID patients. Let's be honest. Why are you suddenly disregarding cancer patients and giving all the attention to COVID? It's as if nobody is dying of anything but COVID now. We've denied medical treatments to those who need them. And on top of everything, our political leaders have refused to take any pay cuts at all in the process.
I said that out on a tweet. Tracy pushed it out there. I think it was April the 10th. Pascal O'Donoghue was saying that we're in a very grave situation economically. The downturn is coming. We're on the brink of a very near depression. And then he was asked, "Then would you be willing to take a pay cut and stuff like that? Let's not get too hasty. I think there is some positive projections and stuff like that." I think exactly that. That was April the 30th. Tracy O'Malley tweeted that out there as well.
Nonsense. And listen, just on the economy, while we were onto it. First of all, any of the data that we're seeing now, and there's very, very little of it, is based upon quarter one. And remember, our lockdown didn't come into play until March, wasn't it? St. Patrick's weekend, if I remember correctly. So that means we had January of normal operation, February of normal operation, we're into March. So if our GDP is, which it is, it's contracting and we have more unemployment, etc., this is just based upon the last couple of weeks of Q1 that are just coming out into the numbers. When we get to the end of Q2, we are going to see the real, it is going to be a calamitous fall in GDP. And as I said, I've been on the central bank website and the ESRI, but I believe their predictions are based upon everything returning to normal over the summer, which of course it will not. So, it's as if I could throw numbers out at you of forecasts, but just like any economic forecast,
it's like any poll that you get. It's not worth the paper it's written on. It's like all the polls.
It isn't. It really isn't. But I just get the feeling, and I don't know, do you agree, that people out there, they're not grasping the severity of this economic fallout that is coming. They really are not appreciating what it's going to do to our economy. Now, maybe this will get people's attention, and I did tweet on this. Banks are now reevaluating their mortgage offers
Yeah.
And this is outside of the COVID payment, okay? Anybody in receipt of a COVID payment. So the mortgages that they had originally offered, they're rolling back and saying no, because the banks themselves are predicting significant house price falls. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, anybody in receipt of COVID payment, you know how the government has come to this sort of arrangement with employers to try and keep a certain percentage of their salary paid by the government and then by the employer through this time.
Yeah.
They are now being denied any original mortgages that they would have secured to buy properties. So the bottom line is, Rowan, the property market has frozen. It's just literally seized up. So if we have no transactions, we are going to have, the banks are pricing in significant price falls. So, you know, I don't have to tell you, unemployment, house price falls, businesses closing, government debt, tax rises, carbon tax is up today. Can you
Today,
believe?
already jumped up today. It just came in
Yes,
action.
today.
A nonsense
Can
of a
you,
tax.
yeah. I mean, can you actually believe that we are in the middle, or we're facing a catastrophe, and yet we are going to have taxes increased, because that is going to be the only solution. On anybody who remains in work will have to pay more. And I haven't even begun to think about governments, literally countries going bankrupt in the Eurozone. Now, to my mind, this will inevitably happen. We will see countries collapse. This is
It's an
so serious.
inevitability, Fiona. It is an inevitability.
I cannot emphasize, you know, as an economist, and I know we're doom ridden, and this is all we do is cry wolf. But I am telling you, this is catastrophic. This is not going to be anything we can recover from. And Philip Lane, he is chief economist of the European Central Bank. And I know him. He's a hugely clever person. He's another one, Harvard, you know, top scholar of the works. And based upon his forecasts, he thinks that it will at least take 3 years for the Eurozone to recover. I say that's way optimistic, because
Really?
Obviously, you know, their forecasts are any bit as good as what you would make or I would make, because no one knows how this pandemic is going to play out. We will not, I mean, I know I'm echoing what all the, you know, MSM are saying, but I believe that they're right. We're not going to get back to normal.
Yeah.
I say
I wonder if that to be conflated with the normal day-to-day life in regards to, now we've got some rescinding on the severity of the lockdown, but are we going to go back to where we were before this all clapped out, with handshakes and all that, social distancing, our pressure, our rights given back in? Are we being given this limited lead out, this possibility, as you say, economically, of a 3-year stint turnaround on the economics? That's not what my friends in rural Ireland are talking about. That's not what you paying in economics. And then we have the RTE puppet master, David McWilliams, as we spoke about before, saying that we have a tool at our disposal. Let's just print our way out of it.
Yeah, I know, and I'm kind of sitting in between, caught betwixt and between, whether we're going to have hyperinflation from all this printing, okay, on the one hand, or whether we're actually going to have deflation on the other. Because think about it this way: the economy has seized up. We don't have a functioning economy, really. You know, we have certain, you know, the supply chains are seizing, everything is grinding to a halt. So we're not having money chase much at this point in time to push prices up. So that's why I'm not saying hyperinflation is out of the question down the road, because I believe that's what will
think deflation myself, I think deflation, there's more profit to be earned in deflation because it's a continual down slope.
So do you see what I'm saying? A lot depends on where we go and what the steps are and what aspects of the economy will be allowed recover. Because interestingly, Boeing in the US refused a government bailout. They're going to go to the markets, because what the US government was mandating was that if we give you a bailout, and I can't tell you what stake they were going to take in it, they were going to require Boeing not to let go workers. hold them in, keep them on board in a holding pattern. But Boeing don't want that. They want to go to the markets to see how they will do there, so that my take on it is so that they're not under this conditionality. So what we're just going to see is more and more and more people being laid off these industries. Today we have Ryanair, today we have Aer Lingus letting go, we have BA in the UK, we have Boeing in the US. And my view on the airline industry is these jobs won't be recoverable significantly at all. That's it. They're gone. They're gone. Because, how are we all going to fly? When are you and I going to be allowed back on a Ryanair down to Torremolinos,
That's what David sort of suggested as well. The second tier system, or the second class citizen, the non-recovered person who refuses to take the vaccine, being denied access to planes or traveling around. There's a huge market. If enough of us, I believe most of the live chat here, or many people viewing in after, are in the back of their head as they become consciously and slowly aware of what's being expected. You're going to get a jab of a needle, which is clearly contains human DNA, mercury, formaldehyde, and whatever other constituent that's going to be pumped into 20 other chemicals. And if you introduce someone's foreign DNA, because we know where the DNA particles come from, they're from the aborted fetuses that the Planned Parenthood push out, that the vaccine company get in. So there's an endless tray of supply, and they're setting up this new economy that Bill Gates wants to be the head of the map, because he's taken over all the global medical applications to ensconce himself to be the lead proponent of vaccines on a global scale. And that, because of his eugenicist past and because of his this kind of rhetoric, is exactly what he wants. He's the new George Soros. He's overtaken them for his global plays and stuff like that, because he wants to corner himself and master this one market where we will have to get repeatable vaccines, where there will have to be a rollout of it. And if you don't take it, you're going to become a second-class system. It's akin to the Skynet, to the social credit system that China has. It's communism 2.0. Fiona, before you jump back in there, one of the live chat members asked, do you think there's a possibility of a bank run? And would you give any sort of... And I know you said we weren't to get too, not dog whistling, but too alarmist and stuff like that. But I'm firmly thinking you should be taking your wealth, at least changing your portfolio. And anyone that's doing enough portfolios will have changed that. But for the individual, the normal Joe Soap, I'm still going with gold and silver. I'm saying.
I mean, and you know what, Rowan, I would go with that for you or for anyone, but I would sadly, I have to give you a condition. The government may confiscate it. Don't underestimate what could happen. The US government confiscated gold back in the last century, so it has happened, and it could happen again. But assuming that the government didn't go that far, yes, I would definitely go gold and silver, even silver more than gold at this point.
Silver, I would say. Silver's a more achievable market, because silver's been suppressed to $17 an ounce. It's going to just lift off now. Silver is in everything. Silver's everywhere.
Yeah. And another thing about the banks, yes, we could very well have a one-off wealth tax. In other words, any of us lucky enough to have any savings in any accounts in the bank could have a certain percentage of them expropriated and just taken by the government from us. Now, I don't know whether that would be done straight off on your savings, or whether or not there would be a certain amount that would be protected. You know how now I don't know, what is it, 90 grand or something you have that you don't, that is secure. So I would check that out. And if possible, if you can't get your savings into any other vehicle that you trust, distribute them across a couple of bank accounts at least, just to make sure that you have smaller amounts so that you're not overloaded in one particular account. So that's all I could say now. But I'm with you on the metals, Rowan. But I also say, just think there could be confiscation. But in which case there could be a black market anyway in it. I mean, we could,
Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is also one to suggest, but not everybody's up to date. Not everybody's able to access that or has the understanding to jump into the blockchain.
I know.
But go ahead, Fiona. Sorry.
And I was going to say, what you're saying is absolutely right. But all roads seem to lead to Bill Gates. Somebody sent me a very interesting graphic on the UK and the leadership in government there, and also in how the chief medical advisor, and also in Imperial College you have Niall Ferguson, etc., etc. Everyone who is dominant now in the UK rolling out these policies, is linked to Bill Gates or funded by Bill Gates. It's absolutely incredible. And speaking of the future mandated vaccines, I was speaking to someone in the Middle East, and we were debating the different countries and the legislation in the different countries that would need to be overcome to make such legislation active. And they were saying to me that in the Middle East, they effectively have police states anyway. So as it stands, a citizen's ID card could be linked to getting a vaccine. They have the facilities in place now to do testing, to do vetting. Everything is done through the government, through the police. So it's all there anyway. So to just flick over to mandating a vaccine would be no trouble to certain more totalitarian countries as it stands.
City West, and I'd say there's other depots that we're not seeing. City West has still been, its whole car park is shielded off. It's all placed out. I don't know what in preparation for. You see empty testing stations still out on situ, even though the numbers are dropping off the charts. Even though the UK has said it's reaching past peak infection is now going on a downward slope. Boris Johnson just announced that last night. But and how are we? I mean, mysteriously, how are we still suffering and our figures are going up? I don't suppose it's anything to. I know we keep banging on like a fucking drum. The airport's still being open, or the ferry port's still allowing people to travel around, or movements from Northern Ireland.
No, it doesn't. It's not. It isn't coherent. That's the thing, Rowan. What they're doing is just not a coherent strategy, and it's almost like it was never intended to be. Because they're just not convincing, which is why that's why I struggle to understand why even Micheál Martin, who may not be the brain of Britain, can't even get it together to challenge what's being done. Because it is completely haphazard, illogical, irrational, all the policies. So I'm with you,
all the policies. I mean, how much of the old guard Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael members, to see the two of them coalescing now, the two parties coming again, and it's not because of a national unity, and it's not anything like that. But I'm sure there's the cohort of Fianna Fáil supporters and all that are absolutely sick to the graw of what's occurring under the guise of a pandemic. That these two have coalesced to form some sort of a unity government, and to be so utterly dependent now, people before profit, to be trying to offer an incentive now with the Greens by more carbon tax involvement, by more taxation, and then they'll use this. They'll use the slant. Well, it was the Greens that brought that in. That increased your taxation and stuff like that. And ever all the while, our debt mountain grows, our national debt and our repayments keep ticking away because we're borrowing on the never, never. 70%, 80% is not unrealistic for the working population. What's the unemployment? Welfare is going to go. Welfare is going to crash.
It will.
199, you're having a laugh.
Yeah, the state is not going to be able to sustain itself. It won't. If we continue and we are lurching forward into the abyss economically, the state will not be able to provide welfare. That's the bottom line. Or the borrowing will become so erroneous or so burdensome that the interest rates are going to skyrocket on our debt. So something is going to give. And the next thing you know, we're under another structural adjustment program from the old IMF World Bank, and they'd only be delighted to lend us more money on, draconian conditions. But I tell you what, Rowan, there's one way that you can completely subjugate a population. Hunger.
Oh, yeah. You said that straight off the start. The main weapon of the European Union has been cheap food, always has been. And I said it this morning in my stream. I don't know if I mentioned it with Dave, but we've certainly said it. Food prices are on the increase now. Keep an eye on your food prices. Get your long-term stock in place. Again, I can't encourage you enough to plant seeds. You may think I'm crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've been discussing the US situation, and I have seen that in certain states they've gotten in crowds with their guns demanding an end to the lockdown.
That was Michigan, Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan. So obviously, the plan over the years has been to disarm the US, but that hasn't gone according to plan. So I'm thinking the US, because it's the New World Order needs to take the US down. It's very, very key to completely subjugate that country. And the West too, the West but the US is the primary focus. And I was wondering then, because so many of the US population are still armed, what would the trigger be to to get them to give up their arms. And I'm thinking, short of World War III, which we could even debate that, I'm thinking hunger. Yes, Patricia, who she said, who controls the food controls the people. Yeah, Patricia O'Connell. Yeah, absolutely right. And that is a possibility. It is a possible scenario that the US, the food supply shocks there, the supply chain, and the US comes under extreme stress, and we have
So
riots, etc.
President Trump has said he's going to keep the meat processing open like that. I note here one of our processors has gone down. That all the staff have come down COVID positive, but allegations are being said that they already knew that that was the case and that the staff were told to keep their mouths shut because they're all on working visas or they're all in like that. That's the allegation. But now the processing plant has to be shut down because they've infected the whole workforce there as well. You know.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So and at the end of the day, that serves a useful purpose as well, because obviously the bigger objective, if you keep your eye on the bigger picture, is to roll down or scale down completely meat production across the world, effectively, because the New World Order
Another way to force you into a vegan lifestyle or get into the soy and stuff like that and push these GMO GMO
well,
milk, you know.
That's if, I've said that's if we are lucky enough, because they don't want us taking anything from nature, because everything, we're going to be living in a sustainable way. So we're not going to be able to take that which we can't give back. So Bill Gates, somebody actually put up on my Twitter feed that Bill Gates has invested in a GMO or a manufactured meat.
Yeah, no, he did. He came up with a meat alternative. It's a vegan thing, and it's processed meat. It's fake meat in essence, what it is. But he has the technology. They've pushed it out, and of course, it's for the future, and it'll be beneficial to you. But only I will have the patent to it, and only I will be the supplier of it. Again, he's trying to corner markets left, right, and center. I only want. Well, I can't say I only want, but I only try and focus on Ireland because we are such a small little player. And we have quite the capability, if we could really just take a hold of politics, if we could get hold of the politics. But politics is lost to us for a long time. And that's why these conversations, that's why the start of a movement, we're going to have to say the National Party, IFP, they're going to have to break down and just form and come together. And that's going to have to be some of the socialists as well, because they're going to, the economic socialists, the workers' parties have been silent in this for decades. Where are they in all of this for the 0-hour contracts that just bypassed Irish workers' rights time and time again? They have been bought into it. They are upper echelon, must have bought into it. But that's always what we were always here, was the economic socialists. So we need to bandy together those that understand the economic situation that we are and try and form a national movement, because the national government, all them players are in bed together. They're going in the one direction. New World Order.
And have you, I mean, I'm maybe talking out of turn here, but have you spoken with Justin Barrett? Would you interview him to see where he stands on these issues?
We've spoken many. There is conversations going on in the background and stuff like that. And pretty much what's going on in the Patriot circles in amongst WhatsApp groups and different Facebook groups is the fracture. Is everybody fracturing as the Gamma Kings come out and start speaking their piece and start poisoning into the words, into the ears, as the right-wing movement online as it stands starts to fracture and turn itself. Does not help our cause, people. Focus on the one true enemy and put aside your petty internal gripes. Those that you support them. Those that you don't attack them. But let attack who the true enemy is. They're right in front of us and what they're doing. Let's come together on that.
Yeah, I think you're right there, Rowan. There's no personality will tick all the boxes for everyone. That's just impossible. And everyone is flawed. I have my, there's no perfect person. So we have what we have. We need to cherish them. We need to cherish those people who have the strength of character, who have the guts, who have the backbone to stand up for our freedom. And how we can have, what really upsets me about Ireland now, and I'm not sort of going to go and be down on my fellow citizens, but the fact that they have allowed themselves to have all their freedom stripped from them. They have allowed all these things that I have deep outlined happen to the country. And then they are pillaring the very people who are trying to restore some normality. I'm not saying protect the vulnerable, but let the healthy work What are we trying to do here? You know, none of it makes any sense. And I'm sorry to say that one of my WhatsApp groups sent me Christy Moore, who's out there against, you know, the movement to get us back our constitutional rights. I mean, I'm lost for words, Rowan. I'm really lost for words on that.
His Marxism is outright Marxism. He believes he's defending the people's right in an emergency situation. I understand that. Christie's so out of contact and so far out that whoever's advising him and pushing him in that bubble, that's. I don't even like. I'm not saying bring it up there. It's an utter disappointment. I agree. But those in the media class, those that are in the arts and stuff, a vast majority of them don't exist in the normal world. I'd say there's a huge reckoning for them when theatres fall off, when television shows are cancelled, when the taxpayer can't keep bailing out RTE time and time again. They're going to be among the normal citizens, those that they've seen up and down. And now's not a time to turn on them either, because their vote is just as important. And if they're willing to change their position and say, okay, right, maybe the Conservative viewpoint did have a point. They have been screaming and talking about economic reform, about transparency in government, but we've been following along the line with the LGBT, and that's not ascribing and pointing them out. We've been distracted by all of that intersectionality.
Totally distracted, yes.
Fighting, you know?
Yeah, because, you know, as important as obviously the sex ed for children, and I feel personally very, very strongly about that, but what's happening now eclipses all of this identity politics. And I would have very much hoped that even some people on the left would have seen that these are the very people who are pro-liberty, pro-sexual liberation, you know, do whatever you want, be as degenerate as you want, let's be honest. But all of a sudden, when it comes to their own personal freedoms and their political liberty, they're fine to give it all up. It just does not strike me. It just doesn't, it's just not coherent.
A great many of them would be suckling on the state teeth, as it were. And I'm saying, and I'm going to be brash in my explanation of this, and I make no excuses. Many of the homosexual community will be dependent on the preps to get their prep treatment and stuff like that. So they won't fall out and deter from the state line or from those that's going to keep feeding them. There's the welfare class, there's the working poor who are only a week away and depend on their subsistence from the state. So they don't want to jeopardize that in any way, shape, or form. That is another tool that has been allowed to carry on far too long. That people, if you're a billionaire class, you're still going to take your children's allowance. And if you're dependent on that week to week, that should have been given out on merit. Should have been the country, in its essence, needs to be run like a business, obviously, but it's never been run like a business because the taxpayer has always been seen to be an endless cash cow. And then as that money then was handed over to the NGO class, and the government saying, well, then you take over this situation, and then this 189 NGO class, 5 billion a year. I'm not just going to keep talking. We don't need that anymore.
No, we don't.
3%. We can't afford to take any more asylum seekers in. That's a rule of thumb. And another necessary cure is to remove illegals, not to give them passports and entry to the welfare system and ingrain them and plant them here forever. They need to be returned to their countries of origin. Priti Patel, the Minister for State in the United Kingdom, has said she wants to adopt a policy now of catch and return, not catch and keep, catch and return to where you came back from. That's something we need here as an island nation as well. We need to start doing the unpalatable things, and we need to do them quickly to start saving as much as the old economy and prepare ourselves for whatever new economy that emerges, because fiat currency is dead. The petrodollar is lying on its arse, and whatever new electronic cash system that they want to introduce, we have to be ready to defend against it or bring in some concessions and say, well, we don't like this and we want to kind of taper it. The cashless society is coming. It's going to be an inevitability, but the dark web will always be there. So we have to have access and a surety that we can have our wealth in our hand. You know, in your hand is where it's at.
Yeah, no, Rowan, I can't. You are right about the NGO class, the sector of society that are sucking off the teats of the state. Yes, you're absolutely right. And the state has been very clever in cultivating these relationships and these people and bringing about this dependency, because they are a constituency who will never, ever go against them. You're absolutely right, because I tend to look at things through the lens of the workers, the ones out there who are, you know, earning an income, but not taking handouts from the state.
1 in 6. The last time I looked at it, Fiona, 1 in 6 work for the state of the working population. That's a huge number. Like when you work that figure out statistically, That's a huge people that are dependent on the state. And I'll make note again, at the inception of this pandemic, I know a lot of the not social workers, the government workers, shall we say, those employed by the state workers, were told to work at home and that they could access their portals to carry on their duties and stuff. But the portal system didn't work. They were told to keep them out shut and just carry on and do your garden. Rather, yeah, that's out there. That is out there. And those of you that are on the state teeth that are working the state, there's a huge overburden in bureaucracy. That alone has to be tackled. When you think of the health bureaucracy in our health departments, 7 operatives for 1 nurse. I mean, it's complete inverse. It should be 7 nurses and 1 bureaucratic, person or secretary to run and maintain them. It's complete reversal. All of that's going to have to change. And it could have been done a long time ago, but now it's going to have to be done.
I do actually think that will have to, yes. And I do think that even this government may have the, what should I say, the backbone to do it. Because there will be no, I mean, I know that there are some workers who feel themselves bulletproof. I won't sort of identify any particular group.
8-year contracts should have been brought back to 8-year contracts. Every 8 years, if you're still deemed beneficial to the state, your contract is renewed. But you've got 8 years of a surety of a job contract. But this lifetime, people just don't want to work. I mean, that's like the communist thing. If I'm guaranteed a wage packet every day and there's no incentive for me to get up, I'll just do the bare minimum.
You'll be happy, and that's yes, and maybe that is why so many people are happy with this lockdown right now, because they don't see any real material change in what they're doing, and they're quite happy to hang around at home and do nothing.
When your USC charge becomes permanent, or it might even be increased, and then see as a state worker when your carbon tax, when you'll be hit with the brunt because as a state worker, you will get that first and foremost,
or their state pension.
Revenue.
Or their pensions are, in jeopardy every bit as much as anyone else's will be.
Pensions are gone, Fiona. I don't want to keep calling you Gemma, sorry. Pensions are gone. I mean, the markets are crashed. There's going to be huge on the state pension. That's all going to be reduced. And we know we're not getting alarmist, but we must speak on these things and at least hypothesize. We could be wrong. Our projections could be a little bit off.
I hope we're wrong. I really hope.
And
if we speak frequently enough, we'll be able to sort of navigate our way through events. But right now, from where I'm looking, these to me seem to be, on the balance of probabilities, very, very likely outcomes. There's just no happy story right now if we let things move the way they are going. And one other thing, I know you like to focus on Ireland, but I just want to bring in something just to cheer people up even more. We have discussed possible scenarios for phase 2 of this pandemic, and we've debated bioweapons, etc., etc. Who knows what goodies are in store for us? But what we haven't discussed is the possibility of World War III kicking off. And I'm not being crazy here, but let me quote you our old friend Lenin. And what Lenin said was this: three things. World War I will see the establishment of communism in Russia. Check. World War II will extend its control over Europe. Check. And dare I say, into Asia, down into Africa and South America. World War III will be necessary to make it worldwide. So always we should look at the Middle East, and always we should be very mindful that a conflagration in that region involving Iran most likely, but not necessarily, but quite likely, would then extend to bring in China and Russia, the US, and the next thing you know, we are in a nuclear situation. And I know it sounds alarmist, but I'm throwing it out there, and I'm saying, although maybe it's improbable, it's certainly not impossible.
I like that. Yeah, definitely like that. I definitely want to keep out. Well, we here on this platform, I myself particularly trying to put pressure on our media class also, and our political class to start pointing fingers at China, not to let them off the hook. The fact that they're on the UN Human Rights Council is an absolute, a distortion of reality to allow them. And when you consider the Falun Gong, when you consider up to 1 million Muslims they have incarcerated in China, when you consider that the human organs that they do, the taking of human organs from prisoners, or even from political prisoners over there, And now that they've cheated and lied even to their own people, because the central tenet of the Chinese Chinese Communist Party is the state can never be wrong. So this is a huge embarrassment that this creeped out. So they tried to suppress it, killing the whistleblowers, punishing journalists, and the big rollout of disinfectant sprays. And why did the pandemic only go that way into the Western society? But Beijing just kept itself intact in its whole economy, and they are now profiting off this global situation, and it's been the trail is going back to Wuhan and the donations from Fauci, blah blah blah.
Yeah. Oh yes, and let's keep a very close eye on developments there, because my view, for what it's worth, is that the real New World Order will be brought in from the East. It will be, if it happens the way it's planned, I do, that it's more of a BRICS-fronted real New World Order, sort of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South America, whereas the West has been the focus, but it's being taken down. So yes, China definitely has to be a key focus from here on in as to what's going on. And by the way, I've realized, because somebody very kindly sent me some information, that the biggest creditor to African countries is China. Yeah, so
China practically owns Australia. China practically owns all Australia, owns all its minerals, mining rights. And the Australians are only coming out to realise how indebted and how much they rely on China now and stuff like that. China even saying that you didn't want any of their news stations. I know if you watch the Sky News, I know Sky News isn't the same over here, but Sky News in Australia is a different kettle of fish.
It's actually quite good in Australia, isn't it?
They are fantastic. Great viewing to watch when you watch any of those guys. Pity they can't transpose that back over here to this part of Europe to have those caliber of journalists. They call it out time and time again, but they know they're in a world of trouble because they're so indebted to China. We cannot allow ourselves. We're going to have to, sooner or later, we are going to have to borrow money from somewhere. Government bonds, the 10-year yields, all their markets are crippled and beyond anything. Where we're going to get money, they're the only one that are sitting on a cash pile. We know the likes of Goldman Sachs and all of them have brought their gold reserves up to the maximum. They've been buying gold for the last 2 or 3 years and have one of the biggest stockpiles, more than any country, I'd say.
Yes.
So is it corporations? The new corporations, you're going to have to sell your country to get out of the debt and let the corporation run it? I mean, I dread the thought.
It'll be, what we said before, some sort of neo-feudalism. It'll be the corporations that really, the technocrats, the corporations run the show. We'll have a totalitarian world government, and we won't even need the likes of Leo Varadkar. Can I just say, but the last thing to say is, somebody drew my attention on Twitter yesterday to the fact that they believed that all the flags have been taken down from outside the United Nations headquarters in the US. Now, I can't confirm or deny that. I've tried to look it up, but obviously because everyone's in lockdown, it's very, very difficult to get any latest photographs. But I thought to myself, let's assume it's true. Now, it may not be, but let's assume it is. Wouldn't that tie in with the fact that Leo flew the UN flag on, was it Easter Monday?
Symbolism, absolutely disgraceful.
Yeah, it's the symbolism to tell us who our real masters are.
And to project through Brussels as well, to let them know that they are on board. We are maintaining control. We will enforce. We have the enforcers, the Garda Commissioner, who will put the jackknife and scare the bejesus out of citizens, murder its citizens in care homes. I'm saying these kind of words is if we were ever to get a hold, if men were ever to pull their fingers out of their rectums and take to the streets, as it's what's known. We just don't have the numbers to do that, but we are building and working on that movement to take and come to the streets. And I hope it comes long before that the police are forced to act and quell and quash dissent through any means necessary. I know the French yellow vests are back on the road.
Yes,
mention of it anywhere in mainstream, and they are being pillaged.
I know. I heard that. Yeah, because you can rely on the French. They at least have the sort of spirit, the esprit, as you would call it, to get out there, because their lifestyle, and we would envy them, has always been wonderful. And what has happened to France is absolutely heartbreaking. So yes, the French are back out, and they will not be cowed. You know how France is so revolutionary.
Liberté. Fiona, I think that's a very good point and good place then for this evening's broadcast to leave it there.
Okay.
Happy enough with you? Well, I'm sure there's a whole range of topics and subjects that we could have touched upon there, but we'll keep it as a review from the previous week. And Friday night, we're booked in now. Next
Booked
Friday.
in next week, yeah.
If that's okay with you?
Laughing to say, somebody asked me a question about the churches. So if we remember it, maybe we'll just do a quick discussion on that next week. Because I'm happy to give my view on that. Anyway, listen, Rowan, it's been a pleasure.
No,
you have a great weekend.
Appreciate that, Hair Bear Ryan. Appreciate you dropping in Friday nights now with Fiona. Tune in 8 o'clock every Friday. And if there's anything more important comes up during the week, obviously we'll invite you to come back on. But
what could be more important? All right, thank you.
As it goes forward. Listen, Fiona, it's very invaluable. Really enjoy these discussions. Everybody in live chat is going mad. I wish you and thank you for dropping in and sharing your thoughts and run through.
It's my pleasure. I enjoy the conversations. Thank you, and thanks for your attention. See you again soon. Take care.
Take care, Fiona. Bye-bye. Okay, live chat, we're going to leave it there. No roll call tonight. It's back again Monday morning around about 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. If you're new to the channel, please don't forget to press the subscription button while you're here. Please give us a like. Please leave a comment and your thoughts on witticism and anything you'd like us to touch upon in the comments section below. Send your messages on to Fiona. Absolutely fantastic guest on. Really enjoying these conversations. And I know you were. I know the live chat was packed tonight. Absolutely delighted to have the engagement and for people singing. And as we say, we're hypothesizing. We're trying to forewarn. This is where you and I have this chance, and with Fiona and many of our other guests, to come in and to try and extrapolate and work on a few hypotheses. But again, it's incumbent that you get these real life, real world connections and build up with those that you're communicating in the live chat or those that you are viewing in on the screen afterwards. Ladies and gentlemen, see you again. I have a thing on Gates. It's a deep dive. It could be about a 2-hour read through. I'm really thinking about it. It was forwarded on to me by Dave Cullen. I think it's worth maybe a sit down, and it's a long, deep read. Could take up to 2 hours, but something to consider over the weekend. Live chat, if I don't see you before then, I'll see you again Monday morning. Have a great weekend, and I'll speak to you then. Wuss.